Third segment crossover today with Locked on Nuggets, Adam Matas. I'm David Locke of Locked on Jazz.
I'm Adam Matas, Locked on Nuggets.
All right, let's talk about it. We are recording this before the Cavaliers game, but we are assuming that we'll have two undefeated teams playing each other, unless something crazy just happened. I heard your show today where you're like, we are the Nuggets, we do this. This is actually the signature of the Quinn Snyder era, is that we actually don't do that. Like the Jazz actually beat below 500 teams with some regularity, so we'll see how that changes. All right, let's talk where the Nuggets are now. Obviously, without Jamal Murray, when I ran the numbers on you, the team still comes out great. I have them as really good. The question is the burden of playing 82 games without that crazy Canadian leading the way.
Right, that no question about it. And the Nuggets, by a crazy start to the season, have two back-to-backs this week. They're all of their games come in bunches this week, and it starts with the road trip to Utah. So that'll be a storyline, I think, for this game. But the major storyline for the Nuggets is that they're figuring out who they are in this new era. You're right that they have a lot of talent. I'm not surprised the numbers say they should be as good as they were last year, even without Murray in the regular season. But through two games, the storyline has been the Nuggets are still figuring out that Jokic is great. What's everybody else, and where do you fit in?
I listen to your show all the time. I think you and Matt are outstanding. You know that. You get a text message from me all the time saying, I love the show. So I think this is really fascinating for both these two teams. They both come in with pretty significant playoff scars. They both are really good. They both have a legitimate chance to thinking they could win it this year. You need Murray probably to get healthy. I don't know what we need. And yet what I'm most interested about, and this might be why these guys are professional athletes and why they're so special, is both teams seem to be mentally in a really good place when they both very easily could be in a mentally really bad place.
It's interesting. We talked before the season about how in this era of NBA, you just have to keep buying a ticket to contention. And both the Jazz and Denver have been contenders now for the last two seasons, whatever degree of contender you want to qualify them as. And this is just another year. So I wonder if it's a little bit that, but I will tell you on Denver's side, this is the type of things you can easily overstate and overanalyze these types of things. Jokic wears sweatpants and T-shirts to the games, and he has for 6 seasons. It's just that's who he is. That's what the kind of guy is. The chip off of the Tim Duncan block. He showed up in a suit the other day, and when asked about it, he said, I'm a different man now. Kind of, I think, tongue-in-cheek. But I will say Jokic it's been a maturation process and a business-like approach to him, really starting last season, but it seems it's been ratcheted up this year. And that's the one thing about Jokic is the team's floor raiser. And he's approached these first two games like a guy who's on a mission, not having fun out there. I'm out here to win. And that's why I think Denver's floor is just so high, including against teams like Utah.
So this is actually, I'd even go more similar, Adam. So to me, that makes sense. I heard you guys talk about that. This was on Monday's show, and I thought it was a great conversation. It makes sense to me. And he was the best player in the world last year. Right. There's no way he thought, he could have said it when the year started, I think I can be the best player in the world. He couldn't have really believed it. But you know what? Last year, he was the best player in the world. And he's now walked around. So here's the other one. Rudy and Joe have that same feeling to them from the Olympics. Joe Ingles said getting the bronze medal for Australia, which was our own, has just been this incredible relief. Rudy Gobert, the silver medal for France. I know they all want to win the gold, and he was devastated when they didn't. But they go in kind of knowing they're not winning the gold, right? The U.S. has got that one latched up pretty well. So there's a little bit of that game, I think, going on for each. Now, I don't know about Donovan and where he is, but he does seem, hey, if Donovan's hit 6 of 12 off the bounce threes to start, so if he wants to just do that for the rest of the year, he's basically unstoppable like Jamal Murray was in the bubble. So that'll work out. So, no, I do find these franchises, Rocky Mountain foes, have been on very parallel paths, and if we weren't somewhat rivals, we probably would just admire where each other are the whole time.
And when we did the Northwestern preview, so you brought up this buying a ticket to contention, just staying in the race. But the other thing you talked about was the narrative gets written from the outside about, they collapsed against this team or couldn't get over the hump. I think both teams, the Nuggets and the Jazz, look at it and they go, hey, we had some injuries, we had this luck or this matchup, but you know what? We're not afraid of it. We don't feel like we are a flawed team in any kind of way. Like with it, and I think the Nuggets feel this way, where they're not like, we got swept by Phoenix or we're not good enough for this. I think they know, hey, we're good. We just got to work at it and become the best version of ourselves. And I think that's why. So from my perspective, certainly with the Nuggets, but I think both teams probably have more confidence than it appears on the outside because they just know they're good.
So, how often have you heard them reference the Milwaukee Bucks? Because that is a phrase that I've heard out of our guys. I think the Bucks and their two playoff just losses
Yeah.
before winning it have given at least the Jazz kind of a model of hope.
It should. Yeah, it absolutely should. I think it even, I mean, you look at even the last several years, Phoenix, things broke right from. I think Denver's at the point where like, hey, we're good enough that we don't need that many things to break right. Every team needs one or two things to break right. They're in that category. But what's interesting about this one, the Gobert Jokic matchup is always interesting. I'm curious to see what Utah does and how they approach that matchup. In the regular season, they've tried different things out. Of course, last year, putting some, Gobert off ball. In this one, I'm curious to see that matchup, but I'm more curious to see Jokic got a lot of help in the first game against the Phoenix Suns and Denver wins. He didn't really get any help in the second game against the San Antonio Spurs, but Jokic was good enough to beat the Spurs by himself in that fourth quarter. He's not good enough to beat the Jazz. So I'm curious to see if this is the first, or maybe we'll see what happens tonight with with the Cavs. But I'm curious to see where Michael Porter starts to find his footing, because I think to beat the Jazz, the Nuggets need big performances out of several guys. Will Barton, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter. Probably 2 out of 3 of those guys need to step up, and we just haven't seen it consistently yet.
By the way, I ran the Jokic numbers on Gobert. Nobody does this to Rudy. This is the testament to how great he is. Over from 1920 playoffs, 2021 season, he's 106 of 95 from the floor when guarded by Gobert, 54%. He's 30 of 59 from threes, 51%. That actually used to be the thing he couldn't do. He couldn't shoot the three over Gobert. More than By the way, I apologize for the computer dings on this segment. It's not Adam, it's me. My Microsoft Teams has decided to just go crazy today, right at this moment that we're recording this, and I have no idea how to quiet.
They might not be coming through because I don't hear them.
Good, then I'm glad.
Can I make a point real quick about the three-pointer?
Yeah.
Because I think there's something to that. The thing that has changed about Jokic over the last season and a half, he's quicker off of the drive. And I think because of that, you have to sag off. You used to be able to run out on him because he's so slow. If he blows by you, you recover. He's really gotten quick with his first step. I know that sounds funny because nobody thinks Jokic is quick. He's quick attacking closeouts now in a way that I think makes defenders close out a little bit more shallow because they're afraid of being blown by.
Okay, so I know you played Cleveland tonight, and since I asked this question, he'll probably take 22 shots, and that's the adjustment. But Michael Porter Jr., only 10 shots in the Suns game, only 10 shots in the Spurs game, and not a great playoff. Like, not a bad playoff, but not a great playoff. What do you think? Is that being the front page of a scouting report? What do you think is going on there with Michael Porter Jr. so far?
I think it's the most fascinating question around the Nuggets and will be the entire season. I think a lot of this has to do with the Nuggets are Jokic's team. You got to fit in around him. And Michael Porter should fit in around Jokic very well. He's an incredible catch and shoot three-point shooter. He's great off of cuts. But for whatever reason, he just hasn't found shots within the flow of the offense. He's not getting to the spots where he should be getting open, reading the court here and there. So, yeah, the low field goal, he's shooting a great percentage, I think, on the season, but he's not getting shots. He's not finding them. And the team certainly isn't going away from what they do well to find him shots. So that give and take, I don't know what the healthy balance is. We had a good debate about this on Locked On Nuggets yesterday. I think Porter can do a better job of learning the game to find shots within the Jokic system. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Nuggets need to kind of give him a little bit of a, hey, we'll meet you halfway on this so that you feel a little bit more comfortable out there. But for this last game especially, just was not finding any shots in the offense.
So you talk about these two teams. I think most people, when they talk about it, they think Jamal Murray, Donovan Mitchell, they think Jokic, Gobert, they think offense. All 4 games have been played. So this is before the Cavaliers game. We'll see what happened tonight or last night by the time this airs. As of this moment, all opponents to the Jazz and the Nuggets have averaged less than a point of possession this year.
It's crazy.
Right? So your 2 first games, the Suns and Spurs defensively are great. And Thunder aren't an NBA team, but the Kings are. And the Jazz defense against the Kings was unbelievable.
I think Kings are good. They're kind of my sleeper good team, surprise good team this year. Denver has not allowed 100 points. I know that's a per game number, but they haven't allowed it yet so far in the first 2. We'll see what happens with Cleveland, but that's another area where I look at the Nuggets. We talked about this before the season. I said, I don't know if the Nuggets can be good defensively this year. It looks like not only can they be good, but so far, early return, small sample size, it looks like that's a strength. That's one of the things they do well. So they'll be very tested tonight with quick guards and Colin Sexton and maybe Garland if he plays. but they'll be especially tested on a back-to-back going against Donovan Mitchell. That's
So
pick and rolls. Obviously, been Denver's kryptonite. They're going to get two teams that can really take advantage of that the Monday and Tuesday.
Jazz went to the playoffs. They got hit with their kryptonite, which was 5 wide. Rudy's out on the wing guarding. No one can guard the ball. They come downhill, and the Clippers win 4 straight against the Jazz. Wildly,
Right.
Actually, the Kawhi injury helps them. Phoenix, the Clippers the Nuggets kryptonite is Jokic in the pick and roll, and they run into Chris Paul, and they get spread out, and Jokic, frankly, looks bad for large parts of that series. Offensively, still great. Like I'm all in. Like, don't misunderstand. Like Rudy was not impactful. Like, 2 great players. It happens. What adjustments do you feel the Nuggets are making to that kryptonite? And then I'll let you take over if there's anything you want to add and ask about the Jazz.
Well, number one thing is having their backcourt playing. I know Murray's not there, but having PJ Dozier and Will Barton makes a huge difference. There is a defensive chemistry in the pick and roll that happens between a guard and a big, just the communication and the timing and rhythm of all of that. But I think more than anything, this is me. I mean, I'm always coming to the defense of Jokic. Just I watch him every night. I think he's still in many ways underrated for what he does. I think he's just more rested. I think he ran out of steam in that series. And even against Phoenix in game number 1, you just saw a much more active Jokic. You really saw it against the Spurs. I think he had 5 stocks or 2 blocks or a block and 3 steals, something like that. He's just been very, very active and mobile on the defensive end, not necessarily in a quickness, but just there's no attrition. He's just the fourth quarter. He looks like he does in the first quarter where he's light on his feet and he's playing at 100% the entire game. I think that's the biggest difference for him.
Anything you need to know about the Jazz before we wrap this baby up?
I'm curious the X factor. I'm curious if there's this Jazz team is kind of the same. We know Donovan Mitchell. We know Rudy Gobert. Is there a guy that's been a little bit surprising so far in the early go that might make a different wrinkle?
No, the only Rudy Gay, I think, will have an impact. Like that's the piece that the front office really believes alters who they are. He's really quite big. I've been surprised at his size just being around him. He's also 35, so we'll see. Coming off a foot injury, let's not be naive about that. Jared Butler was very good in preseason, but I'm just not a big, I know fans love that, but I'm not a big believer that has an impact. Here's the subtle little thing that I think's different about this team this year, and might be overplaying this because there's just not that many things that different. Mike Conley chose to be here.
Right, yeah.
Right? He got traded here. He adjusted. Yeah. And then he figured it out. He in talking to him, he said, I just realized how much I'd be missing if I went somewhere else. And so I just think there's a little deeper it's a very tricky wording, right? Because if I say there's deeper buy-in, it implies there was less buy-in before. I'm not saying that at all. But there's no doubt he's here. He's probably ending his career here, right? Or at least feels that way. Like, I just think there's a little bit, like probably Aaron Gordon feels that way a little bit this year. He just signed he's really here now. And so I think there's a little bit of that that's going on, and that's been evident a little bit in training camp and practice and things of that nature.
Other quick hitter I would have for you is just the bench. How does the Jazz bench look? Denver, that's a huge up and down for Denver.
So Whiteside's replacing Favors, who did not have a particularly good year. He was great against Sacramento. Rudy Gobert was -9, and we won a game, and the Jazz won a game, which I think happened. I think Dan Clayton had a note that 4 times last year Rudy was negative, and the Jazz actually won a game. So
he should grab a rebound per minute when he plays against Denver. Denver's really small. He might be stretched out on defense, but he should rebound a lot.
He's not a great second movement guy. Now, Gobert's the best second movement guy, multiple action guy in the NBA. So that's a hard one. You never look good when you go up in that. And then Eric Pascal's playing in what was George Niang's minutes, which will be Rudy Gay's minutes right now. We'll see. He had a 3 the other night. Actually, the comp on him is, I think he should be building his career to try to be Jay Crowder. So, like, an unabashed shooter at a low percentage that creates gravity by just being such a gunner that people guard it. He's pretty good with the ball in his hands. He's 6'6". He's huge, like big. He actually moves pretty well laterally. So he could play, if you went small, in theory, he could play the 5, and you could switch 1 through 5 if you had to.
I liked Niang. I was a Niang guy.
I did too. He looked really bad in the playoffs, but I love him, and he's one of my favorite guys in the There are, Draymond Green talks about those players, right? There is a real difference between those guys that can play against, that maybe prosper against.
Game.
There isn't, like, when you're playing the 4 best teams in the league,
Yeah.
Or there's a little bit different athletic ability you might need to need. To George Niang, I'm a big fan. He'll be great in Philly. He is unquestionably my favorite player I've ever covered in my entire life.
I think there's 82 game players, 16 game players, and I think there might be like 8 game players, which is the conference finals, because there's almost a different level when you get there and another group falls off.
All right, we got to wrap it up because otherwise this guy texts that shows are too long. I'll always appreciate your time. You and I can talk NBA forever. We should just find 2 days off when both teams are off and just do conversations like that last one. I'm cutting it off because, yes, everybody, that would have been interesting, but we would have been here for another hour. He's Adam Manas. He's Locked On Nuggets. I'm Locked On Jazz. Have a great one. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Podcast Network and making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go to Locked On NBA, the daily podcast, 30 minutes every day, running through all the night's action. You can't get it anywhere else. Go to Locked On NBA for your second listen today. Have a great one.